So the first thing that is seen in this transcript is the cover page. The information we see in the top half is called the case style. That would be this section right here. This includes the specific jurisdiction of the court. Looking at this, there are two different jurisdictions that are noted. The first that is noted is the subject matter jurisdiction. That's where you'll see right here where this says the Superior Court. This means that this is a felony case, at least here in Georgia, and your subject matter jurisdictions may have a different name. Subject matter jurisdiction means that a particular court handles a specific type of cases, i.e. tax court, state court, probate court, etc. Generally, only particular matters can be heard in those courts. So to paint you a picture, you will not hear probate matters in the Superior Court or State Court. You will not hear tax matters at the State Board of Workers' Compensation. Those are just outside of their jurisdictions and they do not have authority to oversee those cases. Those matters are outside of their subject matter jurisdiction. Now, the second jurisdiction is the actual venue, and this is the county or the location that the case was filed in. In this example, we're using it's Lowndes County. That means that this is where the criminal offense took place, or this is where the action occurred in a civil case. So that would be the second part of our jurisdiction when it comes to our case style. Now, this last part of this case style is the state that the case is filed in. In this case, again, state of Georgia. You're going to notice that a lot of our examples are state of Georgia because our school is based out of state of Georgia. Now, you might be thinking, okay, if I'm a reporter in the state of Georgia, for example, then why would I need to put state of Georgia on my transcript? Well, the reason for that is because there can be times where you're going to run into an out-of-state case where you have to do an in-state deposition. So if you notice here, the case style on this one is the Common Pleas Circuit Court in Colleton County in the state of South Carolina. Now, it can often happen that you may take an in-state deposition for an out-of-state case. In this case was filed in the state of South Carolina in the Court of Common Pleas, but the witness that was being deposed was here in the state of Georgia, and therefore the deposition was taken here. Because many states have statutes that only a reporter that is licensed in that particular state has the authority to take down a deposition, this is why you may run into this, and you could run into it quite a bit. And if you do run into this, just remember that the style of your transcript, your pages that you put together, how you put it together, are still going to be in the format of the jurisdiction that you are in. And be sure that you use the state case style that you're given. So it will be the transcript format and style for the state that you're in, but you're going to use the case style, obviously, of the state that the case is filed. Now, in this next section that we're coming up to, these are the parties in the case. Now, in this situation, we're looking at a criminal case. So the plaintiff in the case is always the state, the city, the municipality, whoever it is, or the entity that it is that has filed the case, charging a defendant with whatever crimes there may be, or whatever violations there may be. And the defendant obviously is going to be the person that's being charged. Now, in a civil case, this will be your plaintiff, or in the plural if there are multiple, and same thing with your defendants if there are multiple. The plaintiff is whoever is suing the defendant in this case. Now, be mindful that there can be in civil cases cross cases, interveners, multiple petitioners, etc. So all of those will need to be listed on your transcript cover sheet as well. So keep that in mind when you're putting your transcript together in your cover sheets and when it's dealing with spacing. Make a note of that, and we can go over it in class to discuss it a little more in depth. Now, listed here is your case number. Every case that is filed in any court is going to be given a case number by the court that it's filed in. This can be called a case number, a civil action file number. All of those things mean the exact same thing. It's the number that the court issued to that case when the case was filed. Now, generally, the case number breaks down in this fashion. So this first part is going to be the year that the case was filed, in this case, 2011. The letters in the center usually tell you what the case type is or which court it is, depending on the jurisdiction that this case is filed in. In this example, CR stands for criminal. If this were a civil case in the state of Georgia, it would be CV. And the last part of the case number is the number order in which the case was filed in that court. So for this example, that means that this was the 359th criminal case that was filed in the Superior Court of Lowndes County. And that's generally how your case number will break down for you. Now, on this next example that we're hopping over to, you're going to see this piece only in limited situations. Right here, where we have volume 1 of 6, usually you'll see volumes in situations where there are multiple days to a proceeding. In this case, this is a jury trial cover sheet, and those volumes stand for the number of days that this trial in this case has progressed. Each separate day of this trial will have a different volume number, and each consecutive will follow with the volume number in that order. Another way that you may see this happen outside of court is in a deposition. If a deposition has been started on a particular day and they do not finish that deposition, they suspend the deposition, let's say, to the next day or a week later. If it is a continuation of that same deposition, that could be a second volume of that deposition because it is the continued testimony of that witness. So that's just another situation that you may possibly run into with using volume numbers on your transcript cover sheet. Now, you're going to also next list your proceeding type of the takedown that this transcript is for. In this case, staying with this example that we have now, this is a jury trial, so you're going to want to note that. In our original transcript that we were looking at, or the first transcript we were looking at, this is a guilty plea proceeding. So you're just wanting to make sure, and I'll show you this as an additional one, this is a deposition. So you always want to make sure that you're listing the proceeding type for the transcript that you are producing. And as you see, they could be all types of jobs that you could be taking unless you're specifically working as a official court reporter, then everything will be court. But as a freelance, you can see that you will be having all different types of proceedings that you'll be doing your takedown in. Now, you need to make sure to include the judge's name, of course, listing before the honorable, because it is a show of respect that the judges have earned that this is listed in our transcripts. And then you will list the judge's specific name and title. In this particular case, this is a Superior Court judge. In our first example, it's a Superior Court judge as well, so no need to bounce back and look at that one. But that's the title for this particular judge. Now, also make sure that you list when and what time the proceeding is. So in this case, this is showing all of the dates this trial took place, along with when the sentencing was, and it's also telling us the start time. So when you're doing your start time, you want it to be the exact time that the proceeding begins. So most courts are really adamant about being on time and starting at exactly 8:30, 9 o'clock, whatever it's set for. But you can run into situations where your depositions may not necessarily start at those exact times. So looking at our previous example, if you look here, this had a 12:21 p.m. start time. This was supposed to be a 12 o'clock deposition. So you can see that things were running a little bit behind on that particular day, but you want to make sure that you're noting when the actual proceeding starts. Now, on this example of a deposition cover page, you want to also be sure that when you're listing what the proceeding type is, that you are listing, because it's a deposition, who this is the deposition. So you're going to always make sure to note the witness on the cover page. Again, just like a court cover, you're going to have your date and your start time. Now, a note, if this were a video deposition, a 30v6 deposition, or anything other than a regular deposition, we would note that on the cover sheet. We would state on it video deposition of Deborah Jones. We would state 30v6 deposition of Deborah Jones. So we would make sure to note that on the cover as well. Now, in this example, we also have listed the location where the deposition took place. Now, you could very well run into situations where you're going to have hearings that are via Zoom. Instead of having an actual address where you're doing your Zoom from, you can just put via Zoom video conference and leave it at that. Now, I want to go back and I want to show you one thing. So for right now, we're going to not pay attention to this section talking about appearances because I want to go more formally through that when we start talking about the appearance pages, because more likely than not, that'll be how your transcripts will be unless you are in the state of Georgia. So we'll do a more broad conversation about that in the next set of pages. Now, the other thing that you're going to want to make sure to include on your transcript is your contact information. As you see here, this is listed the court reporter's information. On this other court one, same thing. You're going to see the court reporter's information here, and pardon my messy highlighting, but you're going to make it so that your information is listed on here. You can list your court reporting number if you choose to. Here in Georgia, we tend to list it on our certification pages. Some put it on the cover. It's a preference on which you choose to do. Now, the thing to remember that I do also want to show you is that if you notice on this particular transcript cover for this deposition, the only thing I have listed is my name and my credentials. And this is because this is a deposition transcript that was produced for a agency. Now, with agencies, they tend to have their own cover sheet that tells their contact information for the people who are ordering the transcripts from them. So just note that in those situations, it is possible that you don't necessarily need to have all of your information because it is not you, the individual court reporter, that is producing this transcript. It is the agency that you are working for. And that brings us to the end of our cover sheets. So if you have any questions, make sure that you make note of those questions and you bring them to class so that we can discuss them more in-depthly.